So friends, now chapter number 2 of the GST, and the topic is supply. One of the most important topics. And there is bound to be at least one question in the exam from this topic. At least one, maybe more, right? Just to give you an idea, CGST Act. This is having 170 sections. Actually 171, but last section is repeal. And in this section 2, this is having 121 definitions. Plus it is having 3 schedules. If you can learn this much, which you will have a command over GST. With the rest all, whether it is SGST or IGST, everything originates from this only. Right? So focus on this. Study material is already with you. Right? What I'll give you extra? I will give you this act separately. So you can read entire act section wise. Right? And once we have gone through the material thoroughly, later on focus on act only. Because there cannot be anything out of the act. Right? And this will be hardly 200 pages. And these 200 pages carry 75 marks of your syllabus. Isn't it simple and easy? It is. Very simple, very easy. Don't try to cram. Everything has to be understood. Once you understand logically, maybe in life you don't have to refer it. What is law? What do you, this word you have heard at least 10,000 times till now. What do you know? What is law? Anybody told you what is law?
Law is logic. Law is logic.
It is. Law is, this is logical application of if you understand this, you will never cram law. There is always a logic behind that. There are very few things where we don't find a logic, we need to cram. Otherwise, everything is very, very logical. Try to find the logic, try to find the reason behind something, and you will understand the law. Simple? Now, in this chapter, mainly we are focusing on few definitions, then section 7, 8, and we are talking about schedules. In this chapter, we have few definitions, not all 120 at one place, but what is relevant in this chapter? What is the meaning of business? What is the meaning of goods? What is the meaning of service? Who is the recipient? What is the meaning of consideration? What is money? Few definitions we are going to refer here. Section 7 talks about what is supply. Section 8 is mixed supply, and schedules, those are related to section 7. Right? In schedules, schedule number 1, this talks about certain transactions which will be considered as a supply even without consideration. In the definition, we'll talk about consideration. Consideration is one of the important factors for a transaction to be considered as a supply. But schedule 1 is talking about transactions which are treated as supply without consideration. So I'm just putting a simple title, supply without consideration. Right? In schedule 2 we have certain transactions which are actually combination of transactions, and in that combination whether that is to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. Say for example, when you go to a restaurant, what is supplied? It is food or service? What is the supply? We go for service or we go for food? What does it mean?
Idea is food, but we get both.
In second schedule, that is clarified that it will be treated as a supply of service. Otherwise, basically we are going for food, isn't it? So, just to make it clear, in schedule number 2, we have number of transactions in which clearly it is defined that it will be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. Schedule number 3, this is just opposite. Remember negative list? What was negative list? Those were services which are not considered as services for the purpose of tax. Here also schedule 3 is a negative list. Right. In nutshell, you can write this as negative list. But here we have transactions which are neither supply of goods nor services. Right? So first thing which you have to really remember, what are these 3 schedules? Schedule number 1, transactions which are treated as supply even if those are without consideration. Schedule number 2, these are mixed supplies but treated as either supply of goods or supply of service as given in the schedule. And schedule number 3, there is a certain transactions which are supply as per the definition, but not considered as supply for the purpose of tax. Now, what are the learning outcomes? This is, after studying this chapter, you will be able to analyze the taxable event under GST. Simply, we need to understand what is supply. Next, compare and appreciate the difference between the taxable events under earlier indirect tax regime and GST regime. Very simple, for every tax there was a different taxable event. Now we don't have different things, only one thing is there. Right? For sales tax, one taxable event. For entry tax, another taxable event. For entertainment, third event. For excise, fourth event. And every event was disputed, particularly in excise. Whether the activity is a manufacture or not, that itself was a disputed issue. Lots of debate, right? So now we are not talking about whether you have converted that into manufacture or not. Are you supplying? If you are supplying, then pay tax. Whatever activity you have done, that is besides. Right. So things have been simplified to a large extent. Now number of cases in this law will be very, very limited. Very limited. Only thing whether it is a supply or not. On which is other point that there can be dispute. No other. Right. There will be appeals. Some penalty imposed and the person does not accept then he goes for filing the appeal. Because in the course of adjudication process, one of the most important factor to be considered is intention, that is mens rea. Right? Officer does not accept the fact that person did not have any intention and he goes for imposing the highest penalty. The person goes for an appeal and he proves that no intention involved, penalty may be reduced. That is a different issue. But majority of the cases which are possible in other laws, which were possible in other laws, will not be there now. So comparison is only for understanding. Nobody is going to ask you to differentiate between the taxable event in the old laws and the new law. It is only purely for your understanding. Next, identify the transaction that will amount to supply even without consideration. Just write there, it is schedule 1. Next is, identify the transactions which will be treated as supply of goods and transactions which will be treated as supply of services, along with practical illustrations comparing the situations under the earlier regime and the GST regime. What is that? Schedule number 2. Right. So actually those are mixed things. But whether it is supply of goods or supply of services, that is clarified in the schedule. Next one, pinpoint the transactions which will neither be supply of goods nor supply of services. This is schedule 3. And then comes, explain the composite and mixed supply. What is that? Section 8. Right? We did not mention anything in the first topic. That is section 7. Meaning of supply. Right? So on the first page itself you have what you are going to study in this chapter. And once we have completed this chapter, later on simply take printout of section 7, section 8, schedule 1, 2, 3. These are 5 pages. That's all. For further studies. For first understanding, we are going through this thoroughly. Later on, only those 5 pages, not more than that. Okay? Let's proceed further. Page number 2 in the introduction, second para. This is simply talking about, there were lots of disputed issues earlier. Lots of disputed issues earlier. In excise, whether activity is a manufacture or not. For the purpose of VAT, whether a transaction is a sale or not. For every tax, the event itself was disputed. Right? And when the issue is disputed, what happens? Number of cases. So that is one reason for bringing GST in the simplified format and having one event only. Sale is a business, manufacture is a business. But we are not talking about whether there is a tax on manufacture or not. Person is manufactured but keeping the goods himself, there is no tax. If you supply the goods to somebody else, then the question comes whether it is a sale or not, or whether it is a supply or not. Right? If the transaction is in the course of business, for furtherance of the business, even if there is no consideration, it will be treated as a supply. Right? Schedule number 1. What is the title? Supply without consideration. Just take one example which we'll see in the later part also. Some software company purchased n number of softwares or n number of laptops. Right? Those are capital goods. Availed input credit. Right? After using for certain period of time, those are donated to some charitable organization. This is donated. Is there any consideration? There is no consideration involved. Should it be considered as a supply? Prima facie it is not, because consideration is missing. But the person has availed input credit on those. Even if the supply is without a price, without a consideration, it will be supply for the purpose of GST. Same thing now you can apply for samples. When the samples are distributed, for the production of samples certain inputs are used, capital goods are used, on which the credit has been taken by the assessee. Now even if he distributes it free, it will be a supply. Right? Goods being transferred to my own branch in another state, no transaction. Prima facie no transaction. I am transferring goods to my own branch. Why should I end up paying the tax? But that is also a supply for the purpose of GST. Transfer. Right? So lots of issues, for us it is something new, but otherwise things are very, very simple. And once things are simplified, possibilities of lots of adjudication processes, show cause notices and appeals substantially reduced. Right? In the next paragraph they are talking about, now we have the new taxable event that is called supply. GST law, by levying tax on supply of goods or services, departs from the historically understood concept of taxable event under the state VAT laws, excise law, service tax law, sale, manufacture, service, etc., etc. All those things are gone. Now we are talking about only one, that is supply. Last paragraph is important. If you remember, in the service tax we had lots of abatements. This is the case, this is abatement, this is the case, this much abatement, third case, that is the abatement. That itself was a question, how much abatements in every service? As far as now GST is concerned, no such deduction is there for anything. No such deduction. It is on full value. Percentage varies, right? But we are not talking about that out of the 100% will 50% will be chargeable, 50% will not be chargeable. If there is a charge, it is on full value. If there is no charge, forget that. Question of abatements and deduction, those are gone. Right? So this is important, which will help you to understand the things later on. Now come to the relevant definitions. Now something important begins. What is the meaning of the word goods? Because this is a tax on supply of goods and services. Right? So we need to understand what is the meaning of goods, what is the meaning of services. Right? So goods means anything movable excluding money and securities. Goods means and excluding, it means anything movable. Now this thing may be tangible or this may be intangible. How can there be intangible thing? All intellectual property rights, copyright, patent, trademarks, designs, all come under intellectual property rights. So when these rights are given to somebody, either temporary or permanent, when it is permanent, that is the supply of goods. When it is temporary, that is supply of service. Right? I have a patent. I authorize you to use my patent for next 2 years. The moment 2 years expire, it will automatically come back to me. That is a supply of service. I permanently sold the patent to you. Supply of goods. Right? So anything movable. Movable means something interesting. This is capable of being moved. Something which is capable of being moved. Actual movement is not necessary. Suppose there is something huge having a weight of 100 tons. Is it movable? 100 tons. There are aircrafts weighing more than 100 tons. 100 tons is a flying weight. What is the weight of the bigger vessels? Thousands and thousands of tons. That is floating weight. Right? When something is said to be immovable, or rather when something is said to be movable. Let us take example. One electrical pole on the road. Is it movable or it is immovable? It can be removed as it is. It can be taken to another place and there again it can be fitted and installed, can be used. That is movable. Can we do the same for a building now? As of now, we don't have that technology. Maybe 5 years or 10 years from now, we will have the facility when the entire building is lifted, that is also moved. And then we'll talk about that GST chargeable on building also, if it is of not exceeding this much of size. When that kind of technology comes, building will also become movable. Right? Entire factory of Tata Motors shifted from West Bengal to Gujarat. Entire factory shifted. Right? So all the equipment taken together, those were thousands of tons. Size, weight do not matter. What we are talking about? Only capable of being moved. Actual movement is also not necessary. Clear? Take another example. A lift in the building. Is that movable? Or not? The lift itself has been manufactured at some other place, brought to the site and assembled here, then fitted. And if I want to replace that tomorrow, what happens? Remove that, fit another, it works. Isn't it? And what is removed, it can be fitted at some other place for use. So whatever you can remove, either as it is or after disassembling, and you can reassemble at another place, it can be reused, it will be called as movable. Right? So what is important? There can be on the other side, there can be small things which cannot be removed. Maybe something attached in such a way, if you remove, it will be broken. Once broken, it is gone. That is removable. So question is mobility. Right? Now, this includes all things. I am not taking the specific names, we will refer the definition again. All things which are attached to earth and required to be severed under contract for sale. Now, for example, we have growing crops, grass. These are just examples. Right? What it says? Includes actionable claims, growing crop, grass, and things. So, real thing starts from there. Things attached to a forming part of the land. Growing crop and grass, these are only examples. What is the real thing is? Anything which is attached. And the best example is coal. Coal is always in the mines. Right? That is removed from the mines as per the agreement for sale. any ore, coal was just a basic example which hits you immediately. Any ore is like that. Isn't it? So prima facie that is a test worth. But under a contract that is required to be removed therefrom, and then only it is supplied. So at the time of contract it may be attached, but that is required to be removed, that will also be treated as goods. Got it clear?